Building Citizenship Through Participation. In the next hour, we'll learn about two good ideas, city practices in Dublin and Toronto that engage newcomer communities around the rights, responsibilities, and rights of citizenship. We'll find out how smart cities are shifting the conversation from voting rights and citizenship status to active political participation and a shared sense of identity and belonging. I'm delighted to welcome today's presenters. Claire Reid joins us from the Institute for Canadian Citizenship in Toronto, and Fidel Mutwarazibo joins us from the Immigrant Council of Ireland in Dublin. As we hear about these strategies for active citizenship and the success these programs have achieved, I ask you all to imagine how today's good ideas might be adapted in your own city. So once again, please feel free to submit your questions for the Q&A in the chat box on your screen anytime during the webinar. And now, please join me in welcoming our first presenter. From Toronto, Canada, we welcome Claire Reid. Claire manages the Building Citizenship program at the Institute for Canadian Citizenship, an organization committed to engaging new Canadians through community-based citizenship ceremonies and open dialogue. Hello, Claire. Welcome to the Learning Exchange. Please tell us all about your good idea. The podium is yours.
Thank you so much, Kim, for the nice introduction, and thank you so much for inviting me to present today. It's really an honor. And thanks to all of you for joining us, Fidel and I, today for our presentations. It's really fantastic to have you. So I just thought I'd set the stage a little bit by talking about the context of citizenship in Canada. Canada has a very solid reputation as a multicultural country, and Toronto, where we're based, is touted as one of the most global cities in the world. And I think that this diversity is most apparent when you attend a Canadian citizenship ceremony and witness firsthand the way in which hundreds of thousands are welcomed as Canadians, as equals, every day, every month of every year. More than 2,500 ceremonies performed in 2011 alone. Every new citizen in Canada goes through a citizenship ceremony presided over by a citizenship judge. You can see in the picture there, that's the oath taking part of the ceremony. And the citizenship ceremony is the final step in the process of becoming a Canadian citizen. And for many, this is really, as they described, and as I've heard described, a dream come true for many of them. And 85% of those who come to Canada make the decision to become a Canadian citizen. And this rate of naturalization is one of the highest in the world. And citizenship ceremonies are one of the few public occasions that we have to really appreciate and celebrate this achievement. So these ceremonies have a very powerful way of uniting people, which is why the Institute for Canadian Citizenship, or I'll just refer to us as the ICC since it's a long name, created a program to strengthen the connection between ceremonies and local communities across Canada. For us at the ICC and for all of the volunteers and people that we work with across the country, a ceremony is really a meeting place where all Canadians have an equal say. The main way in which we've achieved this goal of connecting ceremonies to local communities is through our Building Citizenship program. It relies on a national network of volunteers, and we call these volunteers our citizenship committees, and they organize and host very unique citizenship ceremonies together with Citizenship and Immigration Canada, CIC, which is the government department responsible for granting citizenship. And the ICC citizenship ceremonies are always held in public spaces, such as art galleries, schools, libraries, and this is very conscious, and the reason that we hold in these public spaces is to make new citizens feel welcomed, not just by the government, but also by their community and their neighbors. The most unique piece to the ICC ceremony is the roundtable discussion, and this takes place just before the official citizenship ceremony. Each volunteer citizenship committee invites people from the community, people who have either been here for some time in Canada or were born in Canada, to participate in discussions with the new citizens as a way of engaging with their own citizenship. So seated around a table, there are new and established Canadians who collectively reflect on what citizenship means to each and every one of them in a very personal way. And these discussions are very inspiring, and they really help connect and excite everybody around the table before the official ceremony takes place. And then following the ceremony, the committee organizes a reception, once again a chance to really celebrate and share. I'd like to share a few photos and stories that we've collected along the way at some of the ceremonies that we've hosted, just to give you a sense of what one of our ceremonies feels like. And just for the sake of example, I've chosen Toronto to set this example. So in Toronto, 33% of new citizens in Canada live in Toronto, so it's a large population. In Toronto, the ICC has 12 citizenship committees. We host approximately 14 ceremonies a year in Toronto. Toronto, as I mentioned earlier, arguably one of the most global cities in the world. Very large city, 2.48 million people, 5.5 million if you count the larger Greater Toronto area. And it's really a fascinating city where over 50% of the population is born outside of Canada and 30% speak a language other than English or French at home. So it's a very multicultural place, and a place where we really feel the need to encourage all Canadians, both new and established, to engage with their citizenship collectively. So at an ICC ceremony in Toronto, you will meet all sorts of fascinating people. You will meet parents from India who came to Canada to give their children better opportunities. What does citizenship mean to them? In the words of one participant, it means new life. You'll meet young men and women from Sri Lanka, Syria, Sudan, the U.S., El Salvador. What are they thinking on this special day? One participant said, quote, "I didn't just come today to get my citizenship card. I came because I feel Canadian." You'll also find at ICC ceremonies established Canadians of all ages who are participating in a ceremony for the very first time in their lives. And how do they feel? As some of them have said to us, meeting people here today has opened my eyes. I have a newfound sense of appreciation for Canada, for my own citizenship. And you'll meet children. We have lots of children participating in our ceremonies. The children are the reason many immigrants make the decision to come to Canada. What do they love about Canada? The snow, meeting other kids, feeling safe. These are some of the things that we hear back from participants at the roundtable discussions. And you can see from the pictures just the sense of happiness and pride of everyone around the tables, both new and old Canadians. What if you were given the opportunity to meet more people like these? And what if you had the chance to learn more about them, their lives in Canada, what they think about citizenship? Would this help you better understand what makes Canada diverse and special? Would it help you better articulate your own idea of citizenship? We think at the ICC that it most definitely would, and indeed this is the premise behind our Building Citizenship program. We've seen the power and magic of these roundtable discussions and citizenship ceremonies. And each of the individuals that I mentioned met one another at a special ICC citizenship ceremony. You can see in the picture in the bottom left the round tables. So they all met sitting around a table like that, laughing and sharing stories, ideas about what citizenship means to them, all talking from the shared perspective of being proud of their citizenship. And these discussions are what I mentioned earlier is the most unique part of an ICC ceremony, and these are the roundtable discussions. So the committee invites community members to come to the ceremony. The community members are people that have been in Canada for some time or perhaps born here, and they act as roundtable hosts to encourage a discussion around citizenship and really fueling excitement and anticipation for the ceremony that follows. New citizens talk about their sense of belonging and engagement, what it means to them to now be a Canadian citizen. And the roundtable hosts share their understanding of citizenship, how they contribute to their communities, and why it was important for them to be there that day at a citizenship ceremony. What makes these discussions really unique is the people at the table having them. So it's not academics, politicians, or experts talking about citizenship. It's everyday people sharing their lived experiences of citizenship. And I think this is what makes it so absolutely inspiring, is that it's ordinary citizens, and in their ordinariness are extremely inspiring with their stories of engagement and courage. And it's just a truly fantastic experience sitting around one of those round tables. And when it's time to participate in the actual ceremony that takes place immediately after the round tables, the room has been transformed into a community. As each person affirms or reaffirms their citizenship, they do so surrounded by people they know. So immediately following the roundtable discussions, we host the official citizenship ceremony. This is organized by Citizenship and Immigration Canada and presided over by a citizenship judge. As I mentioned before, the ICC ceremonies are always held in welcoming public spaces, places we want to encourage everyone to return to and really feel comfortable in. This photo here is at a college here in Toronto. We've also held ceremonies in art galleries and museums. We've held a museum on Musqueam First Nation land in Vancouver in 2010, and that was the first time that a ceremony had ever been held on First Nations land, so it was really incredibly powerful. And the idea is that by bringing the ceremony into a public space, we really seek to engage the community in celebrating and engaging with new citizens, and helps to ensure that new citizens know that these spaces are just as much theirs as they are anyone else's. The final part of the day is the reception. This is a celebration, a chance for new and established Canadians to connect again and reflect on the momentous moment that just took place. It's important just to mention that it's not about nationalism, but really about celebrating inclusive and strong communities, and by engaging everyone equally and in a discussion of what their citizenship means to them in a very daily and personal way. The program wouldn't be possible without our volunteers. Indeed, the entire Building Citizenship program is built upon a national network of volunteers. From booking the venue to inviting the roundtable host to planning the reception, all of these details are taken care of by our volunteer committees. They devote their time and efforts into really making these citizenship ceremonies incredibly special, and as I said, really turning them into a meeting place for everyone that's there. And with the guidance of just one ICC team member, the Building Citizenship program is run really by this network of, to date, 29 committees involving upwards of 500 volunteers. And you can see from the map that we have volunteers right across, volunteer committees right across Canada. And this is because Canada's biggest cities, or those cities that traditionally have received the highest percentages of immigration, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, aren't the only ones welcoming new Canadians. Other cities, both big and small, are welcoming new Canadians every day. And so this is the reason that we feel it's so important that our program be national in its reach. And our volunteers are extremely diverse. So on our committees, there's usually between 6 to 10 people. And there are people of all ages. They come from a variety of different professional, cultural, educational, linguistic backgrounds. Some are not yet citizens, and some are already citizens, born here or became citizens after immigrating to Canada. But they're all united by their desire to welcome new citizens and encourage greater awareness about active and inclusive citizenship amongst all Canadians. And I think this is really an important aspect to emphasize, that it's really about engaging all Canadians equally in discussing and reflecting and sharing what citizenship means and how that can positively influence engagement. The Building Citizenship program reworked an existing government program to more fully engage the community and involve established, together with new citizens, in the celebration of citizenship. So as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, there have always been citizenship ceremonies, and what we wanted to do was really bring this into the community. And key to this strategy has been an absolutely excellent working relationship with Citizenship and Immigration Canada, the government department responsible for granting citizenship in Canada. And through our partnership, we've really advanced our shared goals of fostering an involved, caring, and understanding citizenry. And by giving community members an opportunity to engage with citizenship as volunteers, organizing and hosting these ceremonies, we think that we're really putting active and inclusive citizenship into action. And new citizens feel very concretely that they're being welcomed and honored by other Canadians. And engaging volunteers allows for a small organization such as ours, we have 7 full-time staff, to really have national reach. So it's really this aspect of being welcomed by volunteers who are organizing these special ceremonies for new citizens simply because they're absolutely thrilled that they've chosen Canada as their home, really leaves an incredibly powerful impact on everyone that participates on that day. And as anyone who works with volunteers can tell you, it's absolutely essential that volunteers are well supported and recognized for the amazing work that they do. And this is why the ICC, we've developed a whole host of different resources that assist volunteers in organizing the ceremonies and connecting them to other committees to share good practices, different ideas of how to do things at the ceremonies. So while the ICC supplies a framework and the support, the committees do have the opportunity to spice things up, if you will, to give things a local flavor. So we recognize that what might work, for example, in Regina, might not work in Halifax and so forth. So the committees really have a chance to build in things that they think are important locally into their community citizenship ceremonies. And we constantly collect feedback from our volunteers, tapping into their experiences and expertise to further strengthen our own programming. And citizenship, I think this is something that we really get a sense of through the roundtable discussions and try to emphasize through all of our ceremonies is citizenship is about more than legal membership in a country. It's about belonging, engagement, participation. As one new citizen at one of our roundtables put it, it's about feeling Canadian, not just being Canadian. And I think that's a really important aspect, something that we've all learned through our community ceremonies. By treating these special community ceremonies as a meeting place, all Canadians feel welcomed and valued equally. And by giving new and established Canadians the opportunity to connect, share experiences, as well as the opportunity to collectively celebrate their citizenship, we believe that we're helping to lay the foundation for a more cohesive, inclusive, confident communities and a nation as a whole. So on that note, I will wrap things up. So thank you so much for your attention and for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to the questions that you might have. Thank you, Kim and Evelyn and Fidel. I'm really looking forward to your upcoming presentation. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you, Claire. Thank you very much for sharing that ICC's tremendous success story. The Building Citizenship program at the Institute for Canadian Citizenship is really a brilliant participatory model for community engagement. You've really given us a really tangible sense of how the ICC is bringing citizenship into the community, as you say, and creating that very real sense of belonging. Thank you very much, and apologies for the audio glitches. I'm going to take a moment to remind our listeners that please do not use the telephone number should it pop up on your screen. So what's next? Let's shift to Dublin, Ireland, where our guest is building another model of active citizenship based on political participation. I'm delighted to now introduce Fidel Mutwarazibo from the Immigrant Council of Ireland in Dublin, where he leads the game-changing Count Us In campaign. Count Us In promotes the voting rights of Dublin's naturalized citizens while educating political parties and candidates about Ireland's increasingly diverse electorate. Hi there, Fidel. Welcome to the
Hi. Hi, Kim. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. I've been attending webinars as a participant as opposed to a speaker, so it's a privilege to share my own learning and experience. So I'll quickly introduce Ireland and Dublin, and then I talk about the campaign which we ran in March in 2011. So Dublin is the western part of Europe. We are a small nation with about 4.5 million people, according to the census of 2011. And the foreign population is about 11% of the total population. That's new because when I moved to Ireland in 1995, the percentage was far much lower. So things have changed quite very quickly between 1995 and 2011. In terms of Dublin, Dublin is a city of about 1.27 million people. It is divided into 4 local authorities, but the initiative I'm talking about today took place in Dublin City, although it is, it's in Dublin City as opposed to the whole of Dublin, because we have a partnership with Dublin City Council who funded the program, but I have to acknowledge that there are 4 local authorities in Dublin. In terms of the foreign-born population in Dublin, it's nearly 20%, which is quite different from what my experience was in my early days of living in Dublin in the late 1990s. Another issue which I want to bring to the table before I start giving my presentation on the project I'm talking about is the voting rights in Ireland. They are very interesting. As you can see on your screen, in general elections, Irish and British citizens can vote. In the Senate elections, you can vote if you are a graduate of Trinity College and the universities which are part of the National University of Ireland, if you are a member of the outgoing Parliament and Senate, but also the members of the local county councils. Interestingly enough, all those who are legally resident in the state can vote in the local elections, irrespective of their nationality. And that's very important because it gives opportunity to have an early route to political participation before one becomes a citizen. For the referenda and the presidential elections, it's Irish citizens only, and the European elections, it's EU nationals, but obviously they have to vote by and large in one jurisdiction, i.e. if they are registered in Ireland, in that case they would not be expected to vote in their home countries. Okay, Claire gave us some statistics. I might as well share some statistics. Based on the data we accessed between 1995 and 2009, April 2009, over 35,000 people were granted citizenship through naturalization. And in the last number of years, the numbers have gone up significantly. Obviously, as people stay and meet the criteria to become citizens, they apply, and if they are successful, they get their naturalization. And for 2011, the figures you can see, there were 16,000 applications processed. And, you know, compared to the year before, it was more than half. Interestingly enough, talking about citizenship ceremony, that's very new in Ireland. On April 1st this year, 4,000 new citizens attended citizenship ceremonies at the National Convention Centre in Dublin, and I have to say at least one of the participants is actually a colleague of myself in the office here, and it was great to see him excited in the run-up to the celebration. I'm also giving the figures for the citizens, British citizens in Ireland, because as I said earlier on, they are eligible to vote in the general elections, which was part of the campaign that I'm about to speak about, which is the Counters In. Counters In. Maybe I'll start by a story before I say what it was about. This came about because people were reporting to us that canvassers and political party activists were reluctant to engage with people who did not look or sound typically Irish. This was in the run-up to the 2011 general elections. It became even very apparent that something had to be done when someone rang our office complaining about being mistaken for being a maid when canvassers called to our house in a reefy part of Dublin, where they have some domestic workers in the neighborhood. As a result, we decided we had to do something about this. We had to do something because we needed to remind political parties and canvassers that the electorate was more diverse than it had ever been before. We also wanted to remind the Taoiseach, the incoming Taoiseach or Prime Minister, to consider appointing somebody of migrant backgrounds in the 11 appointed senators which he obviously or she has the privilege to nominate. We also wanted to encourage naturalized citizens and British nationals to vote in the 2011 general elections. So what did we do? What we did was initially we spent some time doing some developing a media strategy and how we are going to do it. We set up an internal committee to discuss the issue. We availed of the services of a public relations company to help us out. That's DHR Communications. We brought in a professional photographer to advise us on what to do. We did some research in terms of finding out who was eligible to vote in terms of naturalized citizens, because we needed the data for the press release. We hired a video editor because we wanted to produce a YouTube clip at the end of the process. And we started a partnership with Dublin City Council, which helped us to get the resources to cover some of the costs involved. And furthermore, we engaged with migrants themselves who had become citizens or who are part of the second generation. As you can see on the slide, which is on your screen at the moment, we asked people who could vote but who did not necessarily look or sound typically Irish, so to go and pose for a picture in front of the Parliament building not too far away from my office on Kildare Street. So we got some coverage in the national newspapers, the local newspapers, the local radios, as I was saying, the national radios, the TV, and also blogs and online media services. So I have some headlines, some of the media headlines which appeared in the newspapers and online media. Group criticizes lack of migrant candidates in elections. They are voting for the guy who does the funny accents of foreigners. So it was taken, different media groups took different angles as to what the campaign was about, but it was terrific to get some coverage, because it's not always you do something and you get it covered by the media. So in terms of legacy, when you look back, obviously we say, okay, what happened since? What happened was, Dr. Catherine Zaponde was appointed. I'm not saying she was appointed because we asked for it, but at least it was a sign that some of the messages we had were hitting the right note. There was some levels of awareness raising as, covered by the various media coverage. There was also the profiling of diversity in Ireland through the campaign, but also the empowerment of people of migrant background to show and to know that they are able to have a say in what is happening. We got the case study published by Cities of Migration, and that's why I'm here today. And I was also invited to give a presentation on civic and political participation by the European University Institute at the European Parliament in November last year. Today, I am obviously partaking in the webinar, and most recently we were invited to a summer school which will be taking place in Barcelona, and a colleague of mine who was involved in the campaign will be attending on our behalf. And one of the programs where part of the coverage of the campaign took place, that's a program on news talk called Global Village, won a media award through the Media Multicultural Awards hosted by Metro Aaron. So all in all, it has been a big success, but it was a success because of the partnership and all the actors who are involved in making it a success. So the question which one is always asked, okay, so yes, I can see it worked for you, but how did it work? And why did it work? So in looking back, or on what politicians call mature reflection, our success can be attributed to a number of factors. One of them was that the timing of our campaign was right. We were also responding to a need which was perceived by naturalized citizens who came to us and told us their experience. It was very important, all in all, to get people who are affected by the issue to come along with us. So it would not have been great to go to the Parliament building for a picture without having the people we are talking about around. We had also a good communication strategy, and we spent a lot of time doing some planning and organizing. It is also important to remember always when you do something, maybe some people will not necessarily agree with you, but that one should not prevent us from doing something which we feel is good. We did organize a debriefing session with many of the stakeholders in order to figure out if there are any learning and how we can take it from here. And we are still working, and there are some new ideas coming up as a result of this exercise. So I've been speaking for 10 minutes or so it's time to say thank you and wait for the questions, which I hope will be very inspiring and enriching. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Fidel, for that excellent presentation and for sharing some invaluable lessons on not just getting the vote out, but getting the people into the issues. You are really a champion campaign manager. Those media strategies are brilliant. So I thank you both. I thank Claire. I thank Fidel. I hope you've all learned as much as we have about these innovative and practical ideas about how to promote the values and impact of good citizenship and participation. You know what we say, good ideas travel. You'll notice that that there will be a new poll coming up on the screen. Evelyn's just bringing it up now. It invites you to let us know whether you'd adapt today's good ideas in your own city. You can vote at any point during the session. It'll be on screen, and it's a confidential vote. So we've now concluded the formal part of our webinar. It's time for the Q&A. Please continue to submit questions to the Q&A box while we move to our first question. I'm going to open up the question to Fidel and Claire with a simple question. What we all know working in this area is that integration is a two-way street, a dynamic that doesn't just work for the immigrant, but also works importantly for host communities. So what can the host community do to make new citizens feel more welcome? What are some strategies for how to engage receiving communities around this work? And maybe we'll start with Claire.
Okay, thank you, and it's an absolutely excellent question. I think what's really key is to engage the host community in making newcomers to your country feel welcome from the minute they arrive. So not waiting until they're officially citizens, but from the moment they arrive, engaging with newcomers, showing that you're interested in them, learning from them, all of the incredible wealth that they bring to the country is their worldviews, their experiences, their language, their experiences. You know, what we have heard at all of our roundtables across Canada is people saying that they felt at home in Canada the minute they set foot in Canada, and that's really been a strong sentiment, I think, leads to the point of having such a high naturalization rate in Canada, that people feel at home here. And that's in large part due to the people just being incredibly welcoming, being friendly. I mean, it doesn't need to be incredibly complicated, just being friendly and eager to learn about other people. And recognizing that being a good citizen has nothing to do with where you were born. So you can be an incredibly good citizen no matter where you were born. And so engaging them in concrete ways, too, in the welcoming. I mean, that's something that we try through the Building Citizenship program, for example. It's very tangible. It's very concrete, having the host communities at the ceremonies welcoming people as citizens the very first day that they receive their Canadian citizenship. So it's a very tangible way of celebrating it. So giving host communities those types of opportunities of engaging face-to-face with newcomers and learning so that both newcomers and people that are in the community, the host communities, as you said, have a chance to learn about one another.
Mm-hmm. Bringing them together. How about
exactly.
you? Do you have some strategies to suggest for how to engage receiving communities in this work? Fidel?
Oh, okay, sorry. Two things. One is we have to try to get people to understand that everyone, whether you are a migrant or you are a member of an established community, you are individuals. And we have to encourage each member of society to befriend somebody who lives in their neighborhood, somebody whose child attends the same school as my child, because I think it has to be, ownership has to be on all sides. Integration is not only about the migrants trying to make an effort to integrate, it's also about the established community welcoming the migrants to participate and be part of the society. I think in order to have a two-way process, it is very important to make sure that migrants know their rights, for example. It's important also for the host community to know what kind of entitlements and so forth the migrants may have within society. Because if there is lack of communication, lack of political leadership, what tends to happen is the populist rhetoric takes over and it makes difficulties in terms of getting people to engage. In terms of practical applications, we did run a mentoring program a number of years ago where we matched members of the established community with newly arrived migrants to just work on English language conversation classes, helping out in terms of getting to know your rights, writing a CV, and we found it very useful for both the migrants and also members of the established community. And we have to always work too hard, as much as we can, to make sure that people are given the opportunity to feel at home, not to wait until they become citizens to give them that opportunity.
Very good. Fidel, while I have you on the line, Claudia Walters at the Fundación Bertelsmann in Gütersloh, Germany, she wants to know how residency is defined in the city of Dublin. How long do you have to be resident before you vote?
In the local elections, I suppose. That's what Claudia is asking. So what will happen is every year around the autumn, the electoral register is updated. So people will receive forms from the local county councils. All they need to do is to fill the form. And then when they ask you your citizenship, you tick the appropriate box. So they ask if you are a Irish citizen, a British citizen, EU citizen, or a foreign citizen, if you don't fall in those categories. So once you register, then if there are local elections, which they happen every 5 years, you'll get a card telling you can go and vote, but you can only vote in the local elections. But they don't ask you to prove your residency when you are filling in the application. So you have just to be regularly resident. You don't have to be resident. You don't have to be, even an asylum seeker, for example, potentially can vote, can register and vote.
Okay, very interesting. I'm going to go straight to some of the questions we've received. We have some interesting question here very pertinent to the first question we had, from C. Yang. He writes, there are a lot of positive community involvements in the Building Citizenship program, for example, at the ICC. But C. Yang asks, what are some strategies to deal with communities which may not be as supportive? Are there specific examples Claire or you, Fidel, have that you can share regarding non-community support, anti-immigrant sentiments, etc.? And Claire, would you like to begin, please?
Sure. Thank you, Siang, for your question. One of the ways in which we try and engage a whole range of people, and some who may not be necessarily incredibly pro-immigration, if you will, is through the roundtable discussion part of the day. So we invite different people to take part in those discussions, because it's one thing to read about immigration in the news or to hear about it on the radio, but it's very different to hear face-to-face about the different challenges that newcomers face when they come to Canada, and the opportunities that they see, and the reasons that they are so appreciative of their citizenship. So hearing that face-to-face is an incredibly powerful and experience. So we try and invite all different sectors of society to take part in those roundtable discussions. Now, if it's somebody that is, a staunch, xenophobe, anti-immigrant standpoint, we wouldn't invite them to the roundtable discussions because that's not the place. The roundtable discussions is really meant for learning and celebrating. So we do invite people who may not be very aware of immigration or not really have a strong viewpoint in that sense. Another strategy would be, just trying to build the profile of those stories that we collect at the roundtable. So we try and collect the stories that are shared at those roundtables and share them beyond the citizenship ceremony experience. So via different media tools, get those out into a wider audience so that those communities who may not be as supportive of or who may not be as understanding of what the dynamics are have a chance to learn about very personal stories and also from people who are Canadian. As I said, the roundtable hosts, their experiences are also included within those. So people who are established Canadians saying why they think it's so important to be a part of welcoming new citizens.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Fidelia, I'm going to actually, Dita Vogel, writing from the Network Migration in Europe from Bremen, Germany, is asking very much the same sort of question, addressing Fidel. Could you say a few words about your strategy to react to dissenters, people?
And it's a challenging one always, and the challenge is, what do you want to achieve? Do you want them to change their mind, or do you want to inform them? So in terms of strategy, I think the key one which I've seen, which works even for me as an outsider, is to try to humanize the people you are talking about. I have been in situations where people tell you, I hate migrants, or maybe I hate blacks or otherwise, but you are one of us. So if we can bring it to the personal experience, often actually we are able to get people to engage. It does not necessarily mean they accept everything you tell them, but once they recognize the humanity in the person, then sometimes you can sway them somewhat. But I'm not trying to say that you can come up with a formula which works with everybody, but the key is to humanize the people, try to get the facts right, because if I give you an example, a number of years ago, there was a newspaper published in Ireland which stated that asylum seekers were given BMWs. I remember it was in 2001, talking to a group of people who said, okay, this is correct, and somebody was saying it is not correct. But at the end of the 2 hours, most of them said, I think what Fidel is saying is correct, because I brought in the facts and I managed to persuade them somewhat. I'm not sure if it was a permanent change, but at the same time, we have to humanize the people, get the facts, and if we feel we are not going anywhere, maybe agree to disagree, rather than just trying to push people to the limit.
Very good. Well, thank you. I now have a question from Lauren Gardner, and she asks both our presenters, what can youth organizers and people who work with youth organizers around citizens and social identity development take away from the presentations today? What specific advice do you have for youth organizers? Fidel?
Okay, so in actual fact, this year we launched a new initiative. It is called Ambassadors for Change. And what we are specifically doing is to identify people of migrant background who have done part of their education in Ireland, who are willing to go to secondary school and act as role models in those schools. And we'll be doing workshops with all the students, and we'll be trying to see if they can support individual children of migrant background who want to engage, who want to be active citizens in the school, but also in the wider society. So that's a small initiative we are putting together, and we are hoping it will help us to get new ideas and new insights into how we can develop that particular area, because I believe very strongly that we have to invest in youth if we want a better future.
And Claire?
I think it's a great question, and just as being a good citizen has nothing to do with where you were born, I think being a good citizen also has nothing to do with your age. And so I think my point is really to engage youth, not waiting until they're legally of age, for example, to vote, to engage them in their citizenship, but engaging them from a young age. And some of the ways in which we've done that is one of our committees is actually entirely youth-based. So it's a group of youth. Some are newcomer youth and some are already Canadian citizens, and they actually do the organizing for the entire citizenship ceremony, and they participate as the hosts of the roundtable discussions. So and participate in the ceremony. So it really gives them a sense of a greater appreciation of who's in their community and what citizenship means and what it means to them as a, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 16-year-old. So really engaging them in a position of responsibility. So not just there observing, but playing an active role in welcoming and celebrating citizenship.
So Lauren Gardner was a PhD student in psychology in New York City studying youth civic engagement. And I have another question for you, Claire. This time, Susanna from Participation Chimru, an organization that may in fact be Irish. So Susanna is asking Claire about how you get people motivated to participate in your programs at ICC. How do you gain trust of the newcomers, and who facilitates the roundtable discussions? What sort of participation techniques do you find are the most useful?
Okay, so there's a couple of different layers to that for our program. First of all is the building of our actual citizenship committee. So this is a local committee, so we look to all different sectors to build a very representative and diverse committee. We go a lot through word of mouth, talking to people in the different cities where we want to have a committee going, and asking them to then recommend who might else be interested in. And we really try and build very diverse committees, so not everybody from the same professional sector, for example, or educational sector, but really having people from all over the community forming that committee. And one of the ways that they're very encouraged to participate, I think, is that it is an incredibly rewarding experience. It's very tangible, and it's not a massive time commitment. So this is something important to recognize when working with volunteers. They're all really busy with full-time jobs often and families and other commitments. So they're encouraged because it's very rewarding, and it's something that's quite manageable time-wise in their lives, and give them a real sense, what we hear from our volunteers, of giving back, feeling like they're really giving back and giving, enriching their communities and welcoming the new members of their community. As for motivating participation for the roundtable host, that again is done through the committee. So because the committees are local, they have a lot of different connections and networks in their local communities, motivating people to come out and experience it. So the roundtable hosts are people, as I mentioned, who have, for lack of a better expression, established Canadians, meaning people that are born in Canada or who have been here a long time, motivating them to think about their citizenship, because this is often something that, if you're born in Canada, maybe isn't something that you think about on a daily basis. So it's actually a very intriguing, interesting idea. And because most Canadians that are born in Canada have never been to a citizenship ceremony, there's a real sort of curiosity element of wanting to see what that's about and wanting to hear firsthand the stories of new Canadians. And for the motivating of the participants, the new citizens in the roundtable discussions, so they are invited to the ceremony by Citizenship and Immigration Canada, our government partner, because it is an official ceremony. So we don't individually invite the new citizens. They're selected randomly by Citizenship and Immigration Canada to attend the ceremony. But we do send them information ahead of time, letting them know what the roundtable discussions are about and what the purpose is, so that when people come, they've had a chance to think about it and they're not, surprised that there's this discussion aspect to the ceremony. And during the roundtables, it's incredible because it's often very difficult to get the discussions to stop because people are so excited and sharing and laughing and having a great time. So people, I think, are motivated by other people's enthusiasm around the table as stories start to be shared, and ideas from both new and established Canadians are, lofted around the table. It's really quite motivating in that way. And sort of the final element of motivating participation is motivating the different institutions in the community to participate as host venues, so the schools, the museums, the art galleries, the libraries, who, in my experience, have always been incredibly eager to open their doors to welcoming new citizens. It's a way for them to really engage a different audience and to really show that they're part of the community in welcoming new Canadians. So.
Thank you. Both your projects have successfully partnered with government and cultural institutions to make them more accessible to newcomers, but many of our institutions are still sort of a last frontier for many of newcomers. So what advice, what can we do to make our institutions more accessible to newcomers? Fidel?
Okay, I was just thinking while you were speaking, and I was, do we have any examples? And I remembered something called the Untitled Chapter. I don't know if our listeners are familiar to it. It's an initiative which started in the Netherlands for the police, where the police are encouraged to be the mirror of the community they police. In other words, descriptive representation being at the core of organizational development. One of the things which we need to do to get the institution to change is for those institutions to make an effort to embrace diversity through their work, but also through their recruitment processes. I'm not, obviously, a champion of affirmative action or, positive discrimination, but at the same time, organizations have to look back and ask themselves what they can do to make sure they are inclusive of everybody. Because the moment people see themselves mirrored in the organizations, then there is trust and it is easier for people to engage. The other one which I thought would be very important to mention is the need for political leadership. Because if there is political leadership, there can be opening. If there is no leadership, often your messages, they fall on a deaf ear and you can't get in. But if the leadership is proactive, progressive, the leadership can take the lead and the institutions will follow. There is also sort of something very important, which is people to organize themselves. It is difficult to advocate as an individual, but if you are part of a group, it is easier to have access. So likewise, obviously, if you are in an NGO, you are in a homeland association, it is easier for you to engage as opposed to one individual. But all in all, we need to encourage those who can vote, in the case of Countess Zinn, but also what Claire was talking about, to get people who can vote to vote. Then politicians will take you seriously, and if you have a say in what is happening, obviously your voice will be heard.
Thank you very much. We have time just for one very last question. Debbie Belgrave asks a very big question. She says, in Dublin, non-citizens are permitted to vote at the local level. In Canada, non-citizens are not eligible to vote at the local level. She asks, what strategy would you suggest in opening up the rights of non-citizens to vote locally? Now, I'm not sure we can answer that question in the few minutes that we have left, but very briefly, what do you suggest non-citizens, how can non-citizens get involved locally where they may not have the right to vote?
Oh, I mean, if you want, I can come in. One is, I know in the U.S. it's happening, even sitting on school board of management. Mm-hmm. If there are churches or otherwise, they can sit on parish councils. So there are always opportunities to participate. And obviously voting will be a better one, but we have to look back and see if there are any sort of opportunities and use them. But certainly there is always room for participation.
Yeah, excellent. Claire, would you like to add to that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I would agree with Fidel, and it is an excellent question, Debbie, that there are many ways for non-citizens to get involved in different community organizations, on boards, through, cultural or religious organizations, all these sorts of things where they can have a very direct effect on their community and on making positive change in their community and in their city. And indeed, part of the roundtable discussions that we organize are really about sharing ideas on that very front, on what sort of things would you love to see happening in your community, and in what ways can you connect with other citizens to make, citizens or non-citizens, in what other ways can you connect with other people to make those changes happen?
Yeah, wonderful. Keep people thinking about these issues and asking questions, talking to one another. That was just great. We're at the end of our Q&A. I'd like to close by thanking both of you, of course, but also I'd like to ask you both a very short question in closing, and that is, what, if there's one secret, one most important secret to your success, what would that be? In a word. Fidel?
In a word, it is interaction with, stakeholders in any initiative you want to take.
Excellent. Interaction then. And for you, Claire, what would that be?
Mine's actually very similar to Fidel's, and I would say partnership. Partnership as equals with different people in your community, with different organizations, cultural institutions, with the government, to really bring about inclusive and positive change.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much to Claire and to Fidel. Our time has run out. So I would like to let everyone know that how much we enjoyed your questions. We will make sure that all unanswered questions are shared with our presenters. But on behalf of all of our participants, I'd like to now thank Claire Reid from the Institute of Canadian Citizenship in Toronto and Fidel Mutwazibo from the Immigrant Council of Ireland in Dublin. Great ideas, great presentations. Imagine this excellent work being interpreted in your city, adapted by your organization, or changing your neighborhood.